Clara had always been fascinated by Graceland, not just the glitz and the glamour, the jumpsuits and the Cadillacs, but the man behind the legend. She'd spent countless hours reading every book, watching every documentary, trying to piece together the life of Elvis Presley. So when she landed a summer internship in the Graceland archives, she felt like she'd won the lottery. Her job was mostly cataloging old documents and photographs, helping with research for upcoming exhibits. It was quiet work, but every faded letter, every crumpled napkin felt like a direct line to Elvis himself. She was surrounded by his history, breathing the same air, walking the same halls. It was magical. One sweltering Memphis afternoon, Clara was taking a break in the staff lounge, sipping an iced tea. Loretta, one of the long-time kitchen staff, a woman with a kind face and a laugh that could fill the whole mansion, was making lunch. The delicious scent of fried chicken and collard greens wafted through the air. "Clara, darling," Loretta called out, wiping her hands on her apron. "You want some of this chicken? Just made a fresh batch?" "Oh, that smells amazing, Loretta," Clara said, her stomach rumbling. Loretta chuckled. "Same as always, honey. Mashed potatoes, green beans, some cornbread, and peach cobbler for dessert." She paused, then added, almost as an afterthought, "Though I suppose I could whip up some macaroni and cheese if anyone's got a hankering. Haven't made that in ages." Clara blinked. "Mac and cheese? I love mac and cheese. Why don't you make it more often?" Loretta's smile faltered just for a second. Her gaze flickered to the closed door leading into the main mansion. "Oh well, it's just it. Wasn't really on the menu, you know. Not when Mr. Presley was alive." Clara frowned. "Really? I would have thought he'd love it. It's such a comfort food." She imagined Elvis surrounded by his friends, digging into a big bowl of cheesy goodness. It seemed so... him. "Oh no, honey, not at all," Loretta said, her eyes distant, lost in memory. "He did. He loved it very much, but he banned it. From this house, from this kitchen." Her voice was soft, almost a whisper. Clara's eyes widened. "Banned it, like, completely." She knew about Elvis's croaky food habits, his preference for burnt bacon, his love for peanut butter and banana sandwiches, but to ban an entire dish, that was a new one. Loretta just shook her head. It was his rule, always has been since he moved in proper. No mac and cheese. Nobody ever dared to question him about it, not openly anyway. "But why?" Clara pressed, her curiosity now fully ignited. Was it because he disliked it? Did it make him sick? It was complicated. It was a long story, a sad story in a way. She turned back to her pots, her shoulders hunched. Some things are best left unspoken, you know. Some memories are just too heavy to carry around every day. Clara watched her, a million questions swirling in her mind. This was beyond a simple food preference. This was a mystery, a secret, hidden within the walls of Graceland itself. A food banned, not out of dislike, but out of something complicated and sad. Over the next few days, Clara couldn't shake the conversation. She started subtly looking for clues. She went through old menus, trying to find any mention of mac and cheese. Nothing. It was as if the dish had never existed within Graceland's culinary history. She even tried to ask other longtime staff members. "Mr. Presley banned mac and cheese?" she'd ask, trying to sound casual. The reactions were always similar. A knowing look, a slight shift in posture, a quick shake of the head. "That's right, darling," said Bud, an older gardener who'd been with Elvis for decades. His rule: never saw it in the house, never smelled it cooking. Did he ever say why? Clara probed gently. Bud just grunted. "Elvis hack. Some you didn't. You just respected him." He took a long drag from his cigarette, then flicked the ash. "It wasn't about the food, not really. It was about something else from way back." From way back. That phrase echoed in Clara's mind. Something from his past. Something deep. This wasn't just a carcass. This was a piece of Elvis Presley that the world didn't know about, a secret tucked away in the heart of his beloved home. and Clara, the curious intern, felt an undeniable pull to uncover it. She wanted to understand the man, not just the legend, and the mystery of the band Mac and Cheese felt like a crucial missing piece of the puzzle. Her internship had just gotten a whole lot more interesting. As the sun set over Graceland, casting long shadows across the manicured lawns, Clara sat on a bench outside, lost in thought. The grand mansion, usually buzzing with the ghosts of parties and music, seemed to hold its breath, guarding its secrets. And somewhere inside, a simple dish of macaroni and cheese held the key to one of them. She knew she wouldn't rest until she found the surprising truth. Clara spent the next week diving deeper into the Graceland archives, not just for her official duties, but for her personal quest. She pored over old photographs, scanned newspaper clippings from the early days, and read through fan letters. She hoped to find some obscure reference, a forgotten note, anything that might shed light on the Mac and Cheese Band. Most of the documents were about his music, his movies, his tours. But Clara was looking for the little things, the everyday moments. She found a few tidbits about his childhood in Tupelo, Mississippi, and his humble beginnings in Memphis. There were pictures of his shotgun house, small and unassuming, a stark contrast to the grand estate she now worked in. One afternoon, while sifting through a dusty box labeled Miscellaneous Personal, she found a collection of old, faded photographs tucked away at the bottom. Most were blurred snapshots of young Elvis with friends and family. A few showed him looking awkward and gangly, clutching a guitar that looked almost too big for him. Then she found one that caught her eye. It was a sepia-tone picture, slightly crinkled at the edges. A very young Elvis, maybe 10 or 11, sat on a rickety porch step. Beside him was another boy, about the same age, with a mischievous grin and eyes that sparkled even in the grainy photo. They were sharing a single chip bowl, their heads close together. Though it was hard to tell for sure, the contents of the bowl looked suspiciously like a thick, creamy mixture, mac and cheese. Clara's heart pounded. This had to be it. This had to be connected. She peered closer, searching for any identifying marks or names. There was nothing written on the back, just the faint outline of a date. Summer 46. Who was the other boy? And what did this simple meal mean to them? Determined, Clara took the photo to Miss Pearl, an elderly woman who worked in the Graceland gift shop, but had once been a seamstress for Elvis's stage costumes. Miss Pearl was a quiet woman, known for her sharp memory and her tendency to speak in riddles, but Clara hoped she might recognize the boy. Miss Pearl, Clara began, holding out the photo. I found this in the archives. Do you recognize the boy with young Elvis? Miss Pearl, her spectacles perched on her nose, took the photo. Her eyes, usually clouded with age, seemed to sharpen as she looked at it. A slow, gentle smile spread across her face. Well, I'll be, she murmured, her voice soft and melodic. She traced the outline of the second boy with a wrinkled finger. This here is Silas Jenkins, Elvis's best friend, back in Tupelo. Clara's pulse quickened. Silas, do you know anything about him? What happened to him? Miss Pearl sighed, her gaze still fixed on the photo. Silas, he was a good boy, full of fire, just like Elvis. They were inseparable, those two. Paired everything, dreams, secrets, worries, and sometimes a little something extra on their plate. She paused, a wistful look on her face. Especially when Gladys Elvis's mama managed to scrounge up some of that special macaroni and cheese. Clara leaned forward. Loretta in the kitchen mentioned that Elvis banned mac and cheese from Graceland. She said it was a long, sad story connected to something from way back, do you think? Is this related? Miss Pearl looked up, her gaze meeting Clara's. Her eyes held a deep sadness, but also a hint of understanding. Child, that mac and cheese. It wasn't just food to them boys, it was hope, it was comfort. It was a symbol of a promise. Clara's breath hitched. A promise. Miss Pearl nodded slowly. A promise they made to each other in a time when they had nothing but their dreams and their friendship. A promise that got lost somewhere along the way, in the bright lights and the loud music. She handed the photo back to Clara. If you want to understand a band, child, you need to understand that promise. You need to hear about Tupelo, about those hungry days and the dreams those two boys shared over a humble plate of mac and cheese. Clara clutched the photograph, the image of young Elvis and Silas vivid in her mind. This wasn't just a quirky food band, it was a profound testament to a deep friendship and a forgotten vow. Miss Pearl's words hung in the air, hinting at a story both beautiful and heartbreaking. Clara knew she was on the verge of uncovering a truly surprising piece of Elvis's life. A secret held close to his heart, hidden behind a simple kitchen rule. The mystery was finally starting to unravel. Clara spent the next few days trying to coax the full story from Miss Pearl. It wasn't easy. Miss Pearl was a woman of deliberate pace, her memories unfolding like old delicate tapestries. She seemed to weigh each word, ensuring its truth and its sentiment were just right. Finally, one quiet afternoon, after the last visitors had left Graceland and the sun cast long shadows across the trophy room, Miss Pearl invited Clara to sit with her in a small out-of-the-way nook near the kitchen, a place she called her thinking spot. She had a cup of sweet tea waiting for Clara. "All right, child," Miss Pearl began, her voice soft, almost a lullaby. "You're a good girl and you got a good heart. You're not just looking for gossip, you're looking for understanding, so I'll tell you. But you gotta listen with your heart, not just your ears." Clara nodded, leaning forward, utterly captivated. "Elvis and Silas?" Miss Pearl started, her gaze distant, fixed on something only she could see. They were born barely a week apart in two little houses, just down the road from each other in East Tupelo. They were like twins, almost joined at the hip. If you saw one, the other wasn't far behind. She described Tupelo as it was in the 1930s and early 40s. A small, struggling town, especially for families like the Presleys and the Jenkinses. Poverty was a constant shadow, a heavy weight that pressed down on everyone. Food was scarce, and every meal was precious. Their mamas, Gladys and Sarah, they did their best, Miss Pearl continued. Worked themselves to the bone, but times were hard, real hard most days. It was beans and cornbread. If they were lucky, sometimes they'd go hungry. Clara imagined young Elvis, not as the king, but as a hungry boy, his stomach aching, his dreams far bigger than his circumstances. But to those boys, it was like a feast from heaven. Clara remembered the chipped bowl in the photograph. Was it a rare treat? Rare as hen's teeth, Miss Pearl affirmed, and precious when Gladys made it. The whole house smelled like comfort. Elvis, he sneaked a taste of the cheese while she was grating it, his eyes wide with excitement. "But he never ever ate it alone?" Clara asked. "Always," Miss Pearl confirmed. No matter how small the portion, no matter how hungry he was, Elvis would scoop half of it onto another plate for Silas. They'd sit on the porch like in that picture you found, legs dangling, sharing that bowl. They'd eat slowly, savoring every single bite, like it was the richest meal in the world. That mac and cheese became their little ritual, their secret indulgence. It was more than just food. It was a symbol of their friendship, their bond in a world where they had so little. They always had each other, and they always had that shared moment of simple joy. Clara could vividly picture it. Two skinny boys, their bellies full of cheesy goodness, their eyes bright with the innocent dreams of childhood. It painted a completely different picture of Elvis than the one the world knew. This was raw, authentic, and deeply moving. "They talk for hours over that mac and cheese," Miss Pearl said, her voice laced with tenderness. "Talk about their future, about what they'd do when they finally made it big. They'd dream aloud, those two, and they made a promise that tied that mac and cheese to everything they hoped for." Clara held her breath, waiting. This was it, the core of the mystery. the unexpected heart of Elvis Presley's most private secret. So they'd be sitting on that porch. Miss Pearl continued, her gaze fixed on some distant memory, with that warm bowl of mac and cheese between them, steam rising, cheese bubbling, and they'd they'd pobling at Clara. Never being cold again. Clara imagined the scene, the hope in their young eyes. Mostly, Miss Pearl said, her voice dropping to a whisper. They talked about music. Elvis, he always loved to sing. Even then, and Silas, he loved to listen, but he also had a knack for lyrics. He'd hum tunes, make up rhymes, tell stories that sounded like songs. They were a team, you see. Miss Pearl leaned in slightly, as if sharing the most sacred of secrets. "We're gonna eat it in a big house with 100 rooms and a kitchen bigger than our whole house." Clara smiled, picturing the youthful grandiosity. And Elvis, he grinned, that big famous grin even then, and he said, "Yes, and when we do, we're gonna have so much. We won't know what to do with it, but no matter how much we got, we're gonna remember these days. And we're gonna remember each other." Miss Pearl paused, her eyes shimmering. "And we're gonna remember that no matter how much we got, we're still just two boys from Tupelo sharing our dreams." "And Elvis?" Clara prompted, her voice barely audible. "And when they finally made it big, they'd share that mac and cheese again, just like they did on that porch." As a symbol of their journey, Miss Pearl took a slow, deep breath. That was their promise, child, their sacred vow. That mac and cheese wasn't just food, it was a testament to their bond, a symbol of their shared poverty. And their soaring dreams. Clara felt a lump form in her throat. This was so much more profound than she had ever imagined. The mac and cheese wasn't banned out of dislike, but out of a deep, almost spiritual reverence for a childhood pact. It was a tangible link to his past, a reminder of the boy he once was and the friend he journeyed with. They sealed that promise with the last spoonful, Miss Pearl concluded softly. And it was the sweetest mac and cheese they ever tasted, because it tasted of hope. The silence in the room was heavy, filled with the echoes of two young boys' dreams. Clara understood now. This wasn't just a simple food ban. It was a deeply personal, almost melancholic tribute, a testament to a friendship forged in hardship, and a promise that would come to define one of the king's most surprising secrets. The heartwarming beginning of the story made her dread what she knew must come next. The reason why that promise, so sacred, could not be kept in the grand kitchens of Graceland. They held onto that promise through the hard years, Miss Pearl continued, her voice growing a little stronger now, like a storyteller settling into the bittersweet part of a tale. Elvis and Silas. Even when Elvis's family moved to Memphis in '48, they stayed in touch, letters, sometimes a phone call if they could scrape up the change. They still talked about their dreams, about music. Clara knew the history. The move to Memphis, Elvis's struggles to finish school, his odd jobs, his first recording at Sun Studios. She pictured him, still just a kid, carrying the weight of that promise from Tupelo. Then things started to change. Miss Pearl said, her voice laced with a subtle sadness. Elvis, he started playing those little gigs. Small places, honky-tonks, anything that would have him. He was raw still, finding his voice, but there was something there, a spark that couldn't be denied. Was Silas with him, Clara asked, hoping for a happy ending to the partnership. Miss Pearl shook her head slowly. No, honey, Silas, he had his own struggles. His Sarah, she got sick, needed constant care. Silas was the oldest, so the burden fell on him. He couldn't just pack up and chase a dream, not like Elvis could. Clara's heart sank. This was the fork in the road. Elvis tried. Lord knows he tried to get Silas to come to Memphis, Miss Pearl recounted. He'd write him letters full of excitement about a new club he'd played, a new song he'd heard. He'd talk about the future. about their promise. But Silas, he'd write back, and his letters that got heavier, full of worries, of responsibilities. It broke Elvis's heart, you know, Miss Pearl said, her voice thick with emotion. He felt so torn. He was finally seeing a little bit of light, a chance to escape the poverty they'd both grown up in, but he was leaving his best friend behind, the one who'd shared every single dream. Clara imagined the conflict within young Elvis, the burning ambition, the desperate need to provide for his family, battling with the deep loyalty and guilt he felt towards Silas. Silas, he wasn't bitter. Miss Pearl, stressed. He was proud of Elvis, truly. He'd tell him, "You go, El. You chase that dream for both of us. Don't you ever look back." But it was a hard thing, a terrible thing, to see your best friend soaring while you were stuck on the ground. The mac and cheese, a symbol of their shared dreams and future, now took on a new, painful layer. It became a reminder of the diverging paths of the promise that seemed impossible to keep. There was one last time they saw each other before Elvis really hit it big. Miss Pearl recalled her eyes clouding. Elvis went back to Tupelo just for a day between gigs. He found Silas working in the fields, hands calloused, face streaked with dirt. They sat on that same porch, but it felt different. The air was thick with unspoken words. Did they eat mac and cheese?" Clara asked softly. "No, child," Gladys offered. She saw the longing in their eyes. But Silas, he just shook his head, said, "Nah, Aunt Gladys, we're saving that for when we're truly home, when the promise is kept." He said it with a smile, but his added. His eyes were so sad. Understood, Miss Pearl exclaimed. That day he left Tupelo, leaving a piece of his heart behind with Silas. The road to stardom was lonely, paved with the ghosts of forgotten promises, and left behind dreams. The mac and cheese, once a symbol of hope, now represented the deep ache of separation, the bittersweet triumph of one friend's success at the cost of another's unfulfilled dreams. Clara could almost feel the weight of that unspoken burden on Elvis's young shoulders. The fame hit Elvis like a tidal wave. From those early Sun Records singles to the RCA deal to his first TV appearances, everything exploded. Suddenly, the hungry boy from Tupelo was a national sensation, then an international icon. He was surrounded by people, money, and adulation. But in the midst of it all, Miss Pearl explained, he carried the weight of his past, and especially the memory of Silas. He tried to reach out. Miss Pearl confirmed, her voice taking on a softer, more reflective tone. After he bought Graceland, when he finally had that big house he and Silas had dreamed about, he wanted Silas to come visit. He wanted to show him everything, to tell him, "We did it, Si, we made it." Clara listened intently, her heart aching for the two boys who had made that promise so long ago. "But life, it has a way of getting in the way, doesn't it?" Miss Pearl sighed. Silas's mama. She was worse, he couldn't leave her. And then Silas himself, he got sick, a lung ailment from working in the dusty fields all his life. It hit him hard. He became frail, couldn't even leave his bed. Elvis heard the news, of course. He was frantic. He even tried to arrange for Silas to be brought to Memphis to the best hospitals, but it was too late. The disease had taken too strong a hold. Elvis got a call one evening. Miss Pearl recounted, her voice barely a whisper. It was Silas's dad, he said. Silas had passed. Said he went peacefully, thinking of Elvis, thinking of their music. The silence that followed was heavy, broken only by the distant hum of Graceland's air conditioning. Clara felt tears prick her eyes. The grand house, once filled with joyous memories, suddenly seemed to echo with a profound sadness. Elvis, he never really got over it, Miss Pearl continued, wiping a stray tear from her own eye. He went to the funeral quietly, trying to avoid the crowds. He stood by the grave, a king amongst common folks. But in that moment he was just a boy again, mourning his best friend. The promise they had made over that humble bowl of mac and cheese now lay broken. The big house, the abundant food, the shared dreams, all were real for Elvis. But the one person he'd sworn to share it with was gone. That's when it happened, Miss Pearl said, looking directly at Clara, her eyes holding a deep, profound understanding. When Elvis came back to Graceland after that funeral, he walked into the kitchen and he looked at Loretta. She was just a young cook then, and he said, real quiet like, "Loretta, I need you to do something for me." Clara leaned forward, her heart pounding. He said, "From now on, I don't want to see any macaroni and cheese in this house, not a single spoonful. Not ever again." Loretta had been confused, Miss Pearl explained. She knew how much Elvis loved it. She tried to ask why, but Elvis just shook his head. He just said, "It's a reminder, a good reminder, but a painful one. And until I can share it with the person I made a promise to, it just ain't right to have it here." And that was it. The ban was enacted. Not out of dislike, but out of a deep abiding love and respect for a friendship lost too soon. The mac and cheese, once a symbol of shared dreams and hope, became a silent monument to a promise unfulfilled, a poignant reminder of the innocent boy he had once been, and the profound cost of his extraordinary success. It was a king's tribute to his forgotten friend, a solemn vow held firm within the walls of his kingdom. The story hung in the air, a melancholic melody woven into the very fabric of Graceland. Clara felt a profound shift in her understanding of Elvis Presley. The glitzy showman, the rock and roll icon, now had a raw, vulnerable layer unveiled. This ban wasn't a quirk. It was a deeply personal, almost sacred act of remembrance. "So the mac and cheese wasn't banned because he disliked it?" Clara finally whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "It was banned because he loved it so much, and it represented a promise he couldn't keep with the one person who truly shared his journey from the beginning." Miss Pearl nodded, her eyes soft. "Exactly, child. It was a silent vow, a way to honor Silas and to remind himself of where he came from, of the boy who sat on a porch step, sharing a simple meal and grand dream step, when he was the king surrounded by luxury. That mac and cheese ban was his anchor to his humble beginnings and to the friend he lost." Clara thought about the enormous pressure Elvis must have been under, the isolation that comes with such fame. This simple, forbidden dish was his way of keeping a piece of his true self, his Tupelo self, alive. It was a quiet rebellion against the very opulence that consumed him, a constant, private testament to loyalty and loss. "Did anyone else ever truly understand why?" Clara asked. Miss Pearl shook her head. "Not many, Gladys. Of course she knew Vernon, his daddy, and a few of us who'd been with him since the beginning, who saw the pain in his eyes. But mostly it was just Elvis's rule. Folks just accepted it, didn't question it. That's how he liked it. Some things were just for him, you see, private. The ban wasn't just about food, it was about the profound loneliness that can accompany extraordinary success. Elvis had achieved more than he and Silas could have ever dreamed of. But at what cost? The one person he wanted to share it all with was gone, leaving behind a void that even Graceland's splendor couldn't fill. Clara felt a surge of respect for Elvis, deeper than any admiration for his music. It showed a profound depth of character, a loyalty that transcended fame and fortune. It was a testament to the boy who never forgot his roots even when he stood atop the world. "And after Elvis passed," Clara asked, looking towards the kitchen door, "why is it still not really on the menu, like Loretta said?" "Well," Miss Pearl explained, "out of respect, mostly. When Lisa Marie took over, and then the estate, they kept a lot of his traditions. They just continued the unspoken rule. It's a part of Graceland's history now, a quiet homage to the king's private heart." Clara imagined a new exhibit at Graceland, one that delved into the man. Not just the legend, a small display about the banned mac and cheese, explaining the heartwarming yet heartbreaking story. Behind it, it would reveal a side of Elvis that few visitors ever saw, the loyal friend, the boy from Tupelo, the man who never forgot his promise, even when life made it impossible to keep. As Miss Pearl rose, signaling the end of their conversation, Clara felt a sense of closure, but also a renewed connection to the legacy of Elvis Presley. She had come to Graceland to catalog history, but she had discovered a living, breathing story, filled with love, loss, and the enduring power of a childhood promise. The king, in all his glory, was still just a man touched by the simple, profound things in life, like a humble bowl of macaroni and cheese. And Clara, the curious intern, would carry that secret and that understanding with her always. She knew that from now on, every time she thought of Graceland, she would see the ghosts of two boys on a porch, dreaming big over a dish they swore to share again. A dish that became a silent testament to a beautiful, enduring friendship. Clara spent the remainder of her internship with a new perspective. Every room in Graceland, every beck seemed to hum with a deeper meaning. The ban on macaroni and cheese, once a trivial curiosity, was now a profound symbol woven into the very fabric of the mansion. She often found herself just standing in the kitchen, looking at the modern appliances, imagining Loretta, a young woman then being told of Elvis's solemn decree. She also made it a point to seek out Silas's name in the archives. It was difficult. His life, unlike Elvis's, hadn't been documented for the world, but Clara found a few more faint mentions in old Tupelo church records and a brief obituary in a local paper confirming Miss Pearl's account of his early passing. Silas Jenkins, a name almost lost to history, but one held dear in the heart of a king. One day, as her internship was drawing to a close, Clara found herself in the gift shop helping Miss Pearl arrange some new Elvis memorabilia. A young girl, maybe 8 or 9, with wide, curious eyes, picked up a Graceland cookbook. "Mommy, does this have Elvis's favorite mac and cheese recipe?" the girl asked, her voice bright. The mother chuckled. "I don't think Elvis was much for mac and cheese, honey. He liked his peanut butter sandwiches." Clara watched, a small smile playing on her lips. She could have interjected, could have shared the story. But she remembered Miss Pearl's words about some things being private. Not every secret needed to be shouted from the rooftops. Some truths were best understood quietly, personally. Still, she felt a quiet urge to acknowledge it, to ensure the meaning of the ban lived on, even if the full story remained a hushed legend. That evening, during a farewell dinner for the interns, Clara was asked to share a personal highlight from her summer at Graceland. She spoke about the depth of Elvis's character, the surprising kindness she had uncovered. She didn't mention Silas by name or the mac and cheese directly. Instead, she said, "I learned that Elvis Presley, despite all his fame, was a man who never forgot where he came from. He carried his humble beginnings and the people from those beginnings deep in his heart." Her words resonated, sparking quiet murmurs of agreement among the older staff members present. Loretta and Bud among them. They knew. As Clara prepared to leave Graceland, she carried with her more than just internship experience. She carried a profound understanding of a human being, not just a celebrity. The king of rock and roll had been a symbol of excess, but he was also a man deeply rooted in loyalty, friendship, and the quiet dignity of memory. The mystery of the band Mac and Cheese had become a powerful narrative for Clara. It taught her that true wealth isn't just about money or fame, but about the bonds we forge, the promises we make, and the quiet ways we remember those who shaped us. Elvis Presley, the king, had lived a life of extraordinary highs, but his most heartwarming secret lay in a simple, forbidden dish. A silent tribute to a childhood friend and a promise made over shared spoonfuls of comfort. And that, Clara knew, was a story more captivating and enduring than any chart-topping hit. Graceland wasn't just a monument to a star. It was a testament to a heart. Months later, back at college, Clara often found her thoughts drifting back to Graceland. Her history classes felt different now, imbued with the understanding that every grand narrative had countless personal stories hidden beneath its surface. She had learned to look beyond the headlines, to search for the human heart beating beneath the legends. She kept the faded photograph of young Elvis and Silas tucked carefully in her journal. Sometimes, when she felt overwhelmed by her own studies or the pressures of future decisions, she would pull it out. She'd trace the outline of their young faces, remembering Miss Pearl's gentle voice, recounting the tale of the mac and cheese and the promise made over it. The story had become her own secret treasure, a reminder that humility and loyalty were qualities that endured even in the most extraordinary lives. It was a comfort to know that someone as famous as Elvis Presley, who seemingly had everything, still held onto the simple, fundamental values of friendship and memory. One snowy evening, as a chill wind rattled her dorm room window, Clara was cooking dinner for herself. She pulled out a box of Elbow macaroni and a block of cheddar cheese. She hesitated for a moment, then began to prepare a simple dish of macaroni and cheese. It was warm and comforting, the steam rising, the aroma filling her small room. As she took her first bite, a wave of tenderness washed over her. She wasn't just eating dinner, she was participating in a quiet ritual connecting to a story that had touched her deeply. She thought of Elvis and Silas, two hungry boys on a porch sharing their dreams. She thought of the promise they made, and the bittersweet reasons it remained unfulfilled in the grand mansion. This mac and cheese, for Clara, was no longer just food. It was a symbol of enduring friendship, of humble beginnings, and of the profound sacrifices inherent in extraordinary lives. It was a reminder that even the biggest stars carry their past, their loves, and their losses with them, often in the most unexpected and quiet ways. Clara finished her meal, feeling nourished not just by the food but by the story. She realized then that the band wasn't truly a band at all. It was a memorial, a powerful, silent, and deeply personal tribute. It was Elvis Presley's way of keeping Silas alive, in his heart a constant whisper of the boy he was before he became the king. And, by understanding it, Clara felt she had truly come to know him. Not just the legend, but the man. The surprising story of the band mac and cheese had opened her eyes to the hidden depths of Elvis's heart. A heartwarming legacy, far richer than any gold record. Clara graduated from college. Her understanding of history, and indeed of humanity, deepened by her summer at Graceland. She pursued a career in museum curation, driven by a desire to tell stories that went beyond dates and artifacts, stories that connected people to the emotional core of the past. She often thought about the mac and cheese band, sometimes mentioning it to colleagues in hushed tones, framing it as an example of the unique personal rituals that even public figures maintained. It remained a quiet testament to Elvis's character, a poignant detail that resonated with her years past. Clara, now an experienced curator, found herself involved in a major project, focused on the personal life of iconic figures, exploring their hidden vulnerabilities and unexpected traditions. As she brainstormed ideas, the image of young Elvis and Silas sharing a chip bowl on a rickety porch flashed into her mind. She wondered if it was time for the world to know the full story of the band mac and cheese, not as gossip, but as a respectful unveiling of a deeply human side of a legend. She believed it would enrich his legacy, showing his capacity for loyalty and heartfelt remembrance. She reached out to the Graceland estate, pitching the idea for a small, sensitive exhibit. She explained how the mac and cheese, an ordinary comfort food, could become a powerful symbol of Elvis's enduring connection to his roots, his friends, and the bittersweet nature of fame. She emphasized the heartwarming core of the story, the love and loyalty that underpinned the seemingly strange band. There was initial hesitation. Graceland was accustomed to focusing on the flash and the music. Clara's passion and her careful articulation of the story's heartwarming nature slowly won them over. She even presented Miss Pearl's recollections, shared carefully and respectfully, as crucial testament. Finally, years after her internship, the exhibit opened. It was a modest display, a replica of a chipped bowl like the one in the photo, alongside an enlarged print of the very photograph Clara had discovered years ago. A short, elegantly written text panel explained the surprising story of the band mac and cheese, detailing the friendship between Elvis and Silas, their shared dreams, the promise made, and the heartbreak reason for the band. It explained how Elvis, even as the king, never forgot the boy he was, or the friend who journeyed with him in spirit. Clara stood by the exhibit on opening day, watching visitors read the panel. She saw smiles, then looks of understanding, and sometimes a few glistening eyes. People were touched. They weren't just seeing a quirky rule, they were seeing the depth of Elvis's heart, a man who, despite unimaginable fame, remained grounded by a simple childhood promise. A young girl about the same age as the one Clara had seen in the gift shop years ago pointed at the photo. "Mommy, look, they're sharing." Her mother read the panel, then looked at her daughter with a thoughtful expression. "Yes, honey. Sometimes the most important things aren't about what you have, but who you share them with and who you remember." Clara felt a warmth spread through her. The secret was out, not in a sensational way, but in a way that honored Elvis Silas and the enduring power of their bond. The mac and cheese, once banned and shrouded in mystery, had finally found its true place at Graceland, not as a dish to be eaten, but as a powerful, heartwarming symbol of a king's loyalty and the profound human connection that transcended fame, loss, and time. It was a tribute that resonated quietly, deeply reminding everyone that even legends carried stories close to their hearts. The exhibit surprisingly became one of the most talked about sections of Graceland. Visitors already moved by Elvis's music and his larger-than-life persona found a deeper connection with the man behind the myth. Tour guides, including a now even older Loretta, who still helped out sometimes, would often pause by the mac and cheese display, sharing anecdotes and adding personal touches to the story Clara had helped bring to light. People started leaving small handwritten notes near the display, sharing their own stories of childhood, friends of promises made and sometimes broken, but always remembered. Created a powerful communal space, a testament to the universality of such deeply human experiences. Clara herself visited Graceland periodically, always making a point to check on the exhibit. She saw the impact it had, the way it shifted perceptions. She often wondered if Elvis, somewhere, knew that his silent tribute was now understood, that Silas's memory was being honored not just within the walls of Graceland, but by thousands of people who visited his home. One afternoon, a few years after the exhibit opened, Clara received a letter. It was from a man named Silas Jenkins, written on slightly aged stationery. He introduced himself as Silas Jenkins' grandnephew. He had visited Graceland, seen the exhibit, and recognized his great-uncle's story. "My family always knew a little bit about Uncle C and Elu," the letter read. They were close, but the full story of the mac and cheese, the promise that was lost to time or maybe just kept quiet out of respect, seeing it there in Graceland acknowledged and honored it, brought tears to my eyes. It means so much to know that Elvis never forgot him. Thomas invited Clara to Tupelo to meet the remaining Jenkins family, to share more stories, to see the old porch where the promise had been made. Clara accepted without hesitation. The trip to Tupelo was deeply moving. She met generations of the Jenkins family, listened to their quiet recollections of Silas, a man remembered for his kindness, his love of music, and his unwavering friendship with Elvis. They showed her photographs she'd never seen, shared faded letters, and walked her to the spot where the old porch had once stood. Standing there, in the quiet, unassuming landscape of East Tupelo, Clara felt the history come alive. She could almost hear the faint strum of the guitar, the low hum of two boys' voices, sharing dreams over a bowl of simple yet infinitely precious macaroni and cheese. The story had come full circle. It had started as a mystery turned into a private secret, and now through Clara's dedication had blossomed into a shared legacy. It wasn't just a story about a famous person. It was a story about loyalty, about the profound impact of childhood friendships, and about the quiet ways we carry our past with us. The band mac and cheese, once a symbol of a promise unfulfilled, had ultimately become a bridge connecting two families, two legacies, and countless hearts, proving that the greatest stories are often found not in the grand gestures, but in the tender, surprising details of a life lived from the heart. As the years unfolded, Clara's professional life flourished, but the story of Elvis Silas and the mac and cheese remained a cornerstone of her personal philosophy. She advocated for more exhibits that explored the human side of historical figures, believing that Understanding their personal struggles and triumphs offered a richer, more relatable perspective. The Graceland exhibit continued to draw attention, and Clara received letters and emails from people all over the world touched by the story. It resonated because it spoke to universal themes: friendship, loyalty, the pain of loss, and the enduring power of memory. It showed that even the most famous among us were fundamentally human, with hearts that ached and remembered. Clara often thought about the transformation of the mac and cheese itself, from a rare, precious treat in poverty, to a symbol of a sacred promise, then to a painful reminder of loss. And finally, through the band, a silent, powerful tribute. Now, with the exhibit, it had become a beacon of understanding, a heartwarming revelation about the king's character. One quiet evening decades after her internship, Clara sat in her own home, looking at the cherished photo of Elvis and Silas. She had spent a lifetime in museums curating histories, but few stories had impacted her as deeply as this one. It was a testament to the unexpected places history could hide, and the profound meaning that could be found in the simplest of details. She thought of the young Clara, so curious and determined, standing in the Graceland kitchen, hearing Loretta's hesitant words about the banned dish. She felt the surge of gratitude for Miss Pearl for sharing such a private and sacred memory, and she felt a deep respect for Elvis Presley. Not just the legend who shook the world with his music, but the man who quietly, steadfastly, honored a promise to a friend. The mac and cheese, a dish almost everyone knew and loved, had become Elvis's most intimate secret, his silent monument to a friendship that shaped him far more than any record deal or movie contract. It was a powerful reminder that true legacies aren't just built on achievements, but on the enduring strength of the human heart and the unbreakable bonds of love and loyalty. Clara smiled. The story had truly come full circle. The banned food from Graceland had unveiled a surprising truth about Elvis Presley, a truth that was not about fame or fortune, but about the profound, heartwarming depths of a man's soul forever linked to a simple dish and a promise made long ago, on a dusty Tupelo porch. And in sharing that story, Clara knew a piece of Elvis's true heart would live on forever, understood, forever cherished.